Hello everyone, welcome to Sleep Space. Tonight we will talk about the fascinating relationship between your conscious mind and your subconscious mind and explore the big question, who's really in control? Before we begin, let yourself get comfortable. As you listen, you might find yourself drifting into thought, reflecting on your own mind, or simply relaxing deeper into the mystery of how your brain actually works. Whether you're here to learn, to wonder, or even to slowly drift off to sleep, you're in the right place. We usually move through life thinking that our conscious mind is the one steering the ship. After all, it's the part of you that chooses what to eat for dinner, what words to say in a conversation, or when to cross the street. But beneath that surface-level awareness lies another system, one that is infinitely more powerful and mysterious, the subconscious. It is always active, always processing, and always influencing what you think, feel, and do, whether or not you notice it. Imagine an iceberg. The tip you see above water is the conscious mind. The massive structure beneath the waves is your subconscious. And while you may feel like you're in charge up on the surface, the truth is that the deeper mass exerts the greatest influence. The subconscious mind doesn't speak in language the way the conscious mind does. It works through patterns, symbols, sensations, memories, and emotions. This is why dreams, which come from the subconscious, often appear as strange narratives filled with symbols rather than direct explanations. It doesn't tell you, "I'm stressed about work." Instead, it might give you a dream where you're trying to run, but your feet are stuck, or you're back in school about to take a test you never studied for. It communicates in images and feelings rather than direct sentences. To understand who is truly in control, we need to look at how these two systems operate. The conscious mind is analytical, logical, and deliberate. It focuses on the present moment and handles immediate decision-making. You consciously decide to pick up a glass of water, to read this sentence, or to send a message to a friend. But that's just the surface. Underneath, the subconscious mind is managing everything else. The regulation of your heartbeat, the digestion of your food, the memory of past experiences, and even the way your personality has been shaped over years. You don't consciously think about how to move every muscle in your arm to lift that glass of water. The subconscious handles all the details. One way to see this difference is through habit. Let's say you're learning to drive. At first, you're conscious of every single step, checking the mirrors, adjusting the seat, pressing the pedals, signaling before a turn. Your conscious mind is overloaded with instructions. But after months of practice, something shifts. Suddenly, you can drive while listening to music, talking to a passenger, or daydreaming. The act of driving has been transferred to the subconscious. You no longer consciously think about each action. It has been automated. The subconscious takes over repetitive patterns so that your conscious mind can focus on other things. This makes the subconscious both powerful and potentially problematic. Habits are stored there, even ones you may wish you didn't have. For example, biting your nails, procrastinating, or reacting with fear in certain situations might all be subconscious responses. You don't consciously decide, "I want to feel anxious when I speak in public." But if past experiences programmed that response into your subconscious, it will rise automatically, sometimes against your will. This raises the question, if the subconscious is running so much of your life automatically, is your conscious mind just an illusion of control? Neuroscience has started to suggest that many of the decisions we think we make consciously are actually made subconsciously first. Brain imaging studies show that neural activity predicting a decision can be detected several seconds before a person reports consciously making that decision. In other words, your brain may already know what you will choose before you become aware of the choice. This suggests the conscious mind is more like a narrator than a decision maker, explaining and justifying decisions that have already been made below the surface. That may sound unsettling, but it doesn't mean we have no free will. Instead, it means free will might be more complicated than we assume. The conscious mind can influence the subconscious through focus, repetition, and intention. Think of athletes who visualize their performance before competing. They imagine themselves succeeding over and over until their subconscious begins to accept it as reality. This technique rewires automatic responses. Similarly, affirmations and meditation can slowly shift subconscious patterns. While the subconscious holds tremendous power, the conscious mind still has the ability to direct it, like a rider guiding a powerful horse. Another way to think of the relationship is to see the subconscious as a vast operating system and the conscious as the user interface. You can only see what's on the screen, but beneath it lies complex programming running everything you do. Sometimes glitches appear, strange fears, compulsive habits, or limiting beliefs. These aren't things you consciously chose. They were installed through experiences, repetition, and emotion. Childhood is a particularly sensitive time for this programming. When you were young, your brain operated more often in theta brainwave states, which are deeply suggestible. Messages you received about whether you were lovable, capable, safe, or not often sank straight into the subconscious and continue to influence you long into adulthood. This is why people sometimes feel like they're battling themselves. One part of you consciously wants to change a habit, but another part resists. The conscious says, I want to eat healthier. The subconscious says, but comfort food is how we cope with stress. And because the subconscious is stronger, it often wins. It's not that you lack discipline, it's that the deeper programming has a different agenda. Understanding this dynamic can shift how you see yourself. Instead of blaming yourself for failing, you realize you're negotiating with powerful hidden systems. Hypnosis provides a fascinating window into this process. In hypnosis, the conscious mind quiets down, allowing direct access to the subconscious. This is why people under hypnosis can change habits, recall forgotten memories, or even alter the way they perceive pain. The conscious gatekeeper relaxes, and the subconscious accepts new instructions. This isn't magic, it's simply working with the part of the mind that usually stays out of reach. The same thing happens in moments of deep focus or flow. When you're completely absorbed in a task, painting, playing music, running, or even just daydreaming, the conscious mind steps aside and the subconscious takes over. That's when creativity often flourishes, because the subconscious is a vast reservoir of connections, memories, and insights that the conscious mind can't hold all at once. Some of history's greatest ideas and inventions have come not through logical conscious effort, but through sudden flashes of subconscious insight. So, who is really in control? In truth, neither part operates fully alone. The conscious and subconscious are in constant conversation, even if you don't notice it. The conscious can set goals, but the subconscious provides the fuel. The conscious can direct attention, but the subconscious provides intuition. Together, they create the experience you call you. But recognizing the role of the subconscious can change how you live. You start to notice the ways your patterns, reactions, and feelings are not random, but echoes of past programming. And once you're aware, you can begin the slow but real process of reshaping them. As we continue, we'll explore more deeply how these two aspects of the mind influence behavior, shape perception, and guide the unfolding story of your life. For now, simply let this idea sink in. Beneath every conscious choice is a vast ocean of subconscious influence, quietly steering the direction of your journey. If the subconscious is this vast ocean operating beneath the surface, then understanding how it interacts with the conscious mind becomes essential to understanding who we are. The conscious mind might feel like the captain, but the subconscious is the sea itself, endless, deep, and capable of carrying us to unexpected destinations. To appreciate just how much power the subconscious holds, we need to explore the way it shapes perception, emotion, and even the very way reality appears to us. One of the most striking aspects of the subconscious is its role in perception. When light enters your eyes, it strikes the retina, which sends signals to the brain. Millions of details stream into your nervous system every second, yet your conscious awareness can only handle a tiny fraction of that information. You are not aware of every hair on your arm, the texture of the chair beneath you, the hum of distant appliances, or the background colours of the room, yet all of this is being processed. Your subconscious mind filters it, deciding what becomes conscious. Without that filtering, you would be overwhelmed by sensory chaos. This process is known as selective attention, and it explains why you might suddenly notice the ticking of a clock only when someone mentions it. The sound was always there. Your subconscious simply decided it wasn't relevant. This filtering system doesn't just reduce noise, it also shapes your reality. If you've ever bought a new car and then suddenly started noticing that same car everywhere, you've experienced what's called the reticular activating system at work. The subconscious tunes perception according to what you value, what you fear, or what you expect. It's not that more of those cars suddenly appeared, it's that your subconscious flagged them as important. In this way, the subconscious doesn't just process reality, it edits it. You literally see the world through the lens of what your subconscious deems meaningful. The same is true of emotions. Think of an emotional reaction: fear, joy, sadness, or anger. Often, these feelings arise before you can rationally explain them. Someone makes a passing comment, and you suddenly feel defensive. A smell drifts past, and you're flooded with nostalgia. These emotional surges are not conscious choices. They are subconscious responses drawn from memory and association. Neuroscientists studying the amygdala, a brain structure involved in fear, have found that it can trigger fear responses before the conscious brain even registers the threat. This is why you can jump in fright at a sudden shadow before realizing it's harmless. Your subconscious reacts first, fast and automatic, while your conscious mind catches up later with explanations. This explains why people sometimes say, "I don't know why I feel this way." They may not consciously know, but the subconscious does. It stores associations built over years of experience, many of which are not easily remembered. For example, maybe you feel uneasy around a certain type of music. Consciously, you can't explain it. But subconsciously, your brain has linked that sound with an unpleasant memory from childhood, so the feeling rises unbidden. The subconscious is like a vast library of experiences, some catalogued neatly and others hidden in dusty corners, all of them quietly influencing your present state. Nowhere is this more evident than in the phenomenon of intuition. Intuition is often described as a gut feeling or a sense of just knowing without being able to explain why. What's really happening is that your subconscious has rapidly compared your current situation to countless past experiences, patterns, and outcomes. It delivers a signal to your conscious mind in the form of a feeling. Intuition is not mystical. It's the subconscious processing data far faster than the conscious can. While the conscious mind is like a careful accountant checking every number, the subconscious is like a supercomputer running vast simulations in the background. Both are valuable, but intuition often feels mysterious because it skips conscious reasoning and delivers its conclusion directly. Consider the story of firefighters who sometimes sense that a burning building is about to collapse and rush out just moments before it does. They may not consciously notice the structural weakness or the subtle shift in heat, but their subconscious has picked up on cues through years of experience. The feeling arrives as a sudden alarm in the gut. Later, they may not even be able to articulate why they acted. They just knew. This is subconscious intelligence in action, keeping us alive and guiding decisions in ways the conscious mind could never match in speed or scope. But this incredible power also reveals a darker truth. The subconscious is not always accurate. Because it relies on patterns and associations, it can perpetuate biases, fears, and limiting beliefs. For example, if someone grew up hearing that they weren't smart, that message may become encoded subconsciously. Later in life, when facing challenges, their subconscious might whisper, "You can't do this," creating self-sabotage. The conscious mind might argue otherwise, but the subconscious holds the weight of repeated programming. This is why many people feel trapped in cycles of doubt, addiction, or negative behavior. The conscious mind sets the goal, but the subconscious quietly pulls in the opposite direction. To see how this works, consider the placebo effect. A person takes a pill believing it will help them, and often their condition improves, even if the pill contains no active ingredient. What's happening here is that belief itself, lodged in the subconscious, triggers physiological changes. The subconscious influences the body through expectation. Studies have shown that even brain chemistry can shift when someone truly believes in a treatment. This demonstrates just how powerful subconscious conviction can be, powerful enough to heal. But it also shows that if the subconscious holds limiting beliefs, it can just as easily hinder healing, growth, or success. The conscious mind, however, is not powerless. It can reshape the subconscious through repetition, emotion, and focus. This is the principle behind affirmations, visualization, and meditation. When a thought or belief is repeatedly impressed upon the subconscious, especially when paired with strong emotion, the subconscious begins to accept it as truth. Athletes who mentally rehearse their performance often show measurable improvements because the subconscious does not fully distinguish between vividly imagined experience and real experience. The neurons fire in similar patterns, reinforcing the behavior as if it were real. This is the same mechanism by which traumatic memories affect people. The subconscious relives the event when triggered, flooding the body with stress hormones even if the danger no longer exists. Neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself, proves that subconscious programming is not fixed. With consistent effort, people can change automatic responses, build new habits, and dismantle old patterns. It is not easy because the subconscious prefers efficiency. It clings to what is familiar, even if it's painful, because familiar patterns require less energy than creating new ones. But with persistence, the conscious mind can send repeated signals that gradually overwrite old programming. This is why therapy, mindfulness, and intentional practice can be transformative. They create bridges between conscious intention and subconscious belief. It's worth noticing that culture itself operates like a subconscious for entire groups of people. From birth, individuals absorb the unspoken rules, values, and stories of their culture. Much of this programming goes unquestioned because it operates beneath conscious awareness. Only when someone encounters a different culture do they realize how much of their worldview was subconscious conditioning. In this way, the subconscious is not just personal but collective. We inherit ideas, fears, and aspirations from those around us, and these shape the way we think without us ever stopping to ask why. This brings us to another fascinating aspect: dreams. Dreams are the subconscious mind's stage. During sleep, when the conscious mind relaxes, the subconscious plays out scenarios filled with symbols, emotions, and fragments of memory. Some psychologists believe dreams are the mind's way of processing experiences, making sense of events, and preparing for challenges. Others see them as random neural firing stitched together into stories. Either way, dreams reveal that the subconscious is active and creative, even when the conscious is silent. Many artists, scientists, and inventors have drawn inspiration from dreams. Proof that the subconscious can reach into imagination in ways the conscious cannot. So when we ask who is in control, we're not really asking about a battle between two forces. Instead, it is more like a dance. The conscious provides focus, choice, and awareness. The subconscious provides depth, memory, and instinct. Problems arise when the two are misaligned, when the conscious wants one thing and the subconscious has been programmed for another. Alignment requires awareness. By noticing the patterns that arise automatically, your triggers, your habits, your fears, you begin to glimpse the subconscious at work. And with that awareness, you gain the ability to shift it. Ultimately, the subconscious is not an enemy to overcome, but a partner to understand. It holds wisdom accumulated through every moment of life, and it works tirelessly to keep you safe, alive, and functioning. But it also holds outdated fears, limiting beliefs, and habits that no longer serve you. The conscious mind can act like a gardener, tending this inner landscape, pulling out the weeds of false belief and planting seeds of new possibility. Over time, those seeds grow into subconscious programs that align with who you want to become. This is the power and the paradox. The subconscious shapes your reality, but the conscious can reshape the subconscious. Each one influences the other in a cycle that defines your experience of life. Understanding this cycle is the first step toward harnessing it, not to dominate the subconscious, but to collaborate with it, to bring awareness into its depths, and to realize that control is not about one part winning over the other. It's about integration, balance, and conscious partnership with the hidden forces that move within you. If the subconscious is like an unseen operating system running in the background, then the conscious mind is the part that interacts with the world, making deliberate choices and narrating the story of your life. But this narrator often believes it has more authority than it really does. To see why, we need to take a closer look at how decisions are actually made in the brain. Neuroscientists have long been fascinated by the timing of thought. One famous series of experiments by Benjamin Liebe in the 1980s showed something surprising. When participants were asked to make a simple voluntary movement, such as pressing a button, brain activity indicating the decision appeared before the person reported consciously deciding to act. In other words, the subconscious brain prepared the action before the conscious mind became aware of choosing it. Since then, more advanced studies with brain imaging have confirmed similar findings. Sometimes the brain shows signs of a decision up to 7 seconds before a person consciously reports making it. This doesn't necessarily mean free will doesn't exist, but it does mean that conscious awareness may not be the origin of many decisions. Instead, it may be the storyteller, rationalizing choices after they've already been set in motion subconsciously. This delay between subconscious preparation and conscious awareness suggests that much of what we think of as control is actually post hoc explanation. Imagine you're picking food off a menu. You scan the choices and suddenly you decide on pasta. To you, it feels like a conscious choice, but studies suggest that your subconscious has already leaned toward pasta, based on past preferences, mood, memories, or even subtle cues in the environment, before your conscious mind caught up. Your awareness then crafts a narrative. I chose pasta because it looked good. The explanation feels true, but the choice may have been made earlier and deeper than you realize. This realization can feel unsettling. If our conscious mind isn't making the initial decision, does that mean we are powerless? Not quite. The conscious mind still plays an important role in directing attention, setting long-term goals, and reshaping subconscious tendencies over time. While the subconscious may decide quickly in the moment, the conscious can influence the conditions that guide those subconscious decisions in the future. It's like steering a ship. You don't control the ocean currents directly, but you can adjust the sails and choose your course. A helpful way to picture this is through the dual process theory of cognition. Psychologists often describe two systems of thinking, System 1 and System 2. System 1 is fast, automatic, emotional, and largely subconscious. System 2 is slow, deliberate, logical, and conscious. When you instinctively slam on the brakes because a car swerves in front of you, that's System 1. When you carefully work through a math problem step by step, that's System 2 by step, that's System 2. Most of life is handled by System 1 because it's efficient. You couldn't possibly analyze every detail of every situation consciously. It would take too long. But for complex or novel problems, System 2 kicks in. These two systems illustrate that the conscious and subconscious are not rivals but complementary tools. Though System 1, the subconscious, often holds the upper hand. One striking example of subconscious control comes from priming. In psychology, priming refers to how subtle cues can influence behavior without conscious awareness. In one study, participants who were exposed to words related to old age, like grey, wrinkle, Florida, walked more slowly afterward, as if their bodies had unconsciously adopted the theme of aging. In another experiment, participants who were exposed to money-related images became more self-sufficient and less willing to help others. These studies suggest that subconscious associations can shape actions in ways people don't realize. You may think you are choosing freely, but in reality, subconscious cues planted by your environment are nudging you. Marketers and advertisers exploit this constantly. A jingle, a logo, a color scheme. All of these bypass the conscious mind and sink into the subconscious, where they influence buying decisions. You might not remember a commercial, but your subconscious does. Later, when you stand in a store deciding which brand to choose, the subconscious leans toward the familiar one, feeding the conscious mind the thought, this seems like the right choice. Again, it feels like conscious control, but the foundation was laid deeper. This doesn't mean the conscious mind is irrelevant. Its strength lies in its ability to reflect, question, and redirect. Unlike the subconscious, which operates on past conditioning, the conscious can envision new possibilities. It can imagine futures that don't yet exist, set intentions, and deliberately practice new behaviors. Over time, these conscious acts can reprogram the subconscious. For instance, someone who consciously chooses to practice gratitude daily eventually shifts their subconscious emotional baseline. What once felt forced becomes natural. The subconscious adopts gratitude as a habit. Consider how this plays out in skill learning. At first, playing a musical instrument requires intense, conscious effort. Every note, every finger placement demands focus. But with repetition, the subconscious takes over. Eventually, a musician can play fluidly, improvising without conscious calculation. The conscious mind provides the direction during practice, but the subconscious carries the performance. This is why mastery in any field involves transferring skill from conscious struggle to subconscious ease. The conscious trains the subconscious until it becomes automatic. Athletes often describe this as being in the zone or in a state of flow. In flow, the conscious mind steps aside and the subconscious executes with precision. A basketball player doesn't consciously think about the angle of their elbow or the exact timing of their jump shot. Years of training have embedded those movements into the subconscious, allowing the body to act with fluid intelligence. The conscious might set the strategy, but the execution comes from the deeper layers. Flow states reveal just how brilliant the subconscious can be when trusted. Yet trust in the subconscious isn't always easy, because it doesn't only hold useful habits, it also holds biases and distortions. Much of human prejudice, for example, is subconscious. People may consciously believe in a quality, but subconscious associations formed through culture and exposure can still influence their snap judgments. This is why implicit bias tests reveal hidden prejudices, even in people who consciously reject them. The subconscious, shaped by years of subtle messaging, reacts automatically. The conscious mind can override those impulses, but it requires awareness and effort. Another example is phobias. A person may consciously know that a small spider poses no real threat, yet their subconscious triggers overwhelming fear. The subconscious doesn't operate on logic, it operates on association and emotion. Once it has linked spiders with danger, the response is automatic. Therapy techniques like exposure therapy work by gradually rewiring those subconscious associations, aligning them more closely with conscious understanding. The subconscious doesn't just influence our reactions to the external world, it also governs our sense of self. Identity is, in many ways, a subconscious construct. From early childhood, messages about who we are, our strengths, weaknesses, roles, and worth are absorbed into the subconscious. Later, the conscious mind interprets these messages as, "This is just who I am." But often, that identity is simply a reflection of subconscious programming. Someone who was praised repeatedly for being the smart one might subconsciously define themselves by intellect. Someone who was told they were clumsy might carry that belief into adulthood, limiting their confidence in physical skills. Conscious awareness of these origins allows people to question whether their self-concept is truly chosen or simply inherited. This questioning leads to a profound insight. Perhaps the conscious mind's greatest gift is the ability to shine a light on the subconscious, to bring hidden programming into awareness. Once you notice a pattern, whether it's a habit, an emotional trigger, or a belief, you can begin to change it. Without awareness, you remain at the mercy of subconscious control. With awareness, you can intervene, redirect, and reshape. It's not about erasing the subconscious, but about collaborating with it more effectively. Mindfulness practices illustrate this beautifully. When someone meditates, they observe their thoughts without judgment. Over time, they realize how many thoughts arise automatically, without conscious choice. A memory surfaces, an emotion stirs, a worry intrudes. The subconscious is constantly sending material into consciousness. By watching these processes calmly, the conscious mind learns not to be ruled by them. Instead of reacting automatically, one gains the space to choose a response. This space is where freedom lies, not in controlling every subconscious process, but in consciously deciding how to engage with them. Ultimately, asking who is really in control may be the wrong question. The conscious and subconscious are not enemies fighting for dominance. They are partners with different strengths. The subconscious handles speed, efficiency, and depth, while the conscious provides reflection, creativity, and choice. Together, they create the experience of being human. Control, then, is not about one part ruling over the other. It's about harmony, using the conscious to guide the subconscious, and the subconscious to support the conscious. When these two align, life feels effortless. Decisions flow smoothly, habits support goals, and intuition guides wisely. When they clash, inner conflict arises. The conscious sets a resolution, but the subconscious resists. This is the tension many people feel in areas like health, relationships, or creativity. They consciously want one thing, but subconsciously expect another. Recognizing this dynamic is the first step toward resolving it. The truth is, your conscious and subconscious are two sides of the same coin. One without the other would be incomplete. The conscious gives you the ability to imagine a better future. The subconscious gives you the momentum to get there. And when you learn to communicate between them, to impress the subconscious with conscious intention, and to listen to the subconscious with conscious awareness, you discover that control is not about domination, but about dialogue. If we think of the conscious and subconscious as partners, then one of the most important questions becomes, how do they actually communicate? How does a thought formed in the light of conscious awareness sink deeply enough into the subconscious to reshape patterns? And how do impulses from the subconscious rise into consciousness, shaping the stories we tell ourselves? To explore this, we need to dive into the mechanics of memory, emotion, and attention. The subconscious mind has its own language, and that language is not words. While the conscious mind speaks in structured sentences and logical reasoning, the subconscious responds primarily to imagery, repetition, and emotion. This is why advertisements are filled with pictures, symbols, and music. The subconscious remembers a smiling face, a catchy jingle, or a vivid image more than it remembers a logical explanation. If the conscious mind is the lawyer making arguments, the subconscious is the child absorbing impressions. Consider the role of emotion. Experiences paired with strong emotion are far more likely to sink into the subconscious. You may not remember every breakfast you've eaten in your life, but you likely remember the morning of a significant event, a celebration, a tragedy, or a shocking surprise. The emotion attached to that moment cemented it. This is why affirmations or intentions work best when paired with genuine feeling. Simply repeating a phrase mechanically may not impress the subconscious, but attaching it to a vivid mental picture and real emotion gives it power. The subconscious listens to what feels important, not just what is said. This brings us to memory. The conscious mind often feels like the keeper of memory, recalling events and replaying them at will. But most memory is subconscious. Every sound, sight, and sensation you've ever experienced leaves some trace in the brain, though most of it never rises into awareness. Hypnosis and deep meditation sometimes allow people to recall forgotten details, suggesting that the subconscious stores more than the conscious can access. Even smells can trigger long-buried memories, because scent bypasses certain brain filters and goes straight to areas tied to memory and emotion. This hidden archive of experiences constantly shapes your present. The way you react to a stranger's expression or tone of voice may have less to do with them and more to do with old memories your subconscious associates with those cues. Attention plays the role of a gatekeeper. What you consciously focus on is like shining a flashlight into the vast warehouse of the subconscious. That light doesn't create new things, it illuminates what was already there. This is why setting conscious intentions matters. If you decide to look for opportunities, your subconscious begins flagging opportunities for your attention. If you decide to dwell on negativity, your subconscious obliges by surfacing examples of problems. The subconscious follows the direction of conscious focus, like a diligent assistant bringing files from storage based on what the boss seems interested in. But this assistant doesn't always get it right. Sometimes it delivers files you didn't ask for, memories and associations triggered by subtle cues you didn't notice. A song on the radio reminds you of a breakup and suddenly you're sad. A smell of baked cookies brings comfort because it recalls childhood. These associations happen automatically, proof that the subconscious is constantly scanning the environment and deciding what to surface. You may think you are responding to the present moment, but often you are responding to the past, resurfacing through subconscious links. This process also underlies creativity. The conscious mind may feel stuck on a problem, unable to find a solution, but later, while showering or walking, the answer suddenly appears. That's the subconscious at work, connecting ideas beneath awareness. Many breakthroughs in science and art have happened this way. The chemist Auguste Kekulé discovered the ring structure of benzene after dreaming of a snake biting its own tail. Paul McCartney reportedly woke with the melody of Yesterday already in his mind. The subconscious had been working behind the scenes, and once it was ready, it delivered the insight to the conscious. This is why people often say that inspiration strikes when they are relaxed. When the conscious mind loosens its grip, the subconscious can speak more clearly. It's also worth considering how trauma illustrates the power of subconscious control. Traumatic experiences are often stored not just as memories, but as visceral responses. A person may consciously know they are safe, yet their body reacts with panic when triggered. This is because the subconscious, encoded with survival instincts, replays the pattern automatically. Healing trauma often involves working not just with conscious understanding, but with subconscious reprogramming, teaching the body and mind new associations so that the past no longer dominates the present. This shows that logic alone is not enough. The subconscious must be engaged at the level of feeling and experience. Another fascinating phenomenon is the placebo and nocebo effects. When someone believes a treatment will help, their subconscious expectation can trigger real physiological changes. Conversely, when someone expects harm, even a harmless substance can produce negative effects. These effects reveal that belief, lodged in the subconscious, can directly influence the body. The conscious mind may set the belief, but it is the subconscious that carries it out, regulating hormones, immune responses, and perception of pain. This blurring of mind and body demonstrates that subconscious influence is not confined to thought, it reaches into physical reality. Habits, too, reveal the mechanics of subconscious programming. Every habit begins as a conscious decision repeated enough times that it becomes automatic. At first, you consciously think about brushing your teeth or tying your shoes. Eventually, the subconscious takes over, freeing the conscious mind for other tasks. This automation is useful, but it also means the subconscious will keep running habits, even when they are harmful. Breaking a habit requires conscious interruption, catching the subconscious mid-act and redirecting it repeatedly until a new pattern is installed. It's like retraining a well-worn path, carving new grooves until the subconscious naturally follows them. This is why rituals and routines are so powerful. They bypass the need for constant conscious effort by embedding desired behaviors into the subconscious. Athletes who go through the same warm-up before every game are signaling to the subconscious, it's time to perform. Writers who sit at the same desk with the same cup of tea every morning are priming their subconscious for creativity. These rituals act as cues, guiding the subconscious into certain states without conscious struggle. In this way, the conscious mind uses structure to harness subconscious momentum. But communication runs both ways. The subconscious is not just waiting for instructions, it also constantly informs the conscious. This happens through dreams, intuition, gut feelings, and spontaneous thoughts. A person walking home might suddenly feel uneasy about a street they were planning to take. That unease may come from subconscious perception, a flicker of movement, a change in atmosphere, subtle cues of danger. The conscious mind interprets it as intuition, but the subconscious has been analysing signals faster than awareness could process. At times, ignoring this communication can be costly, while listening to it can be life-saving. Yet intuition is not infallible. The subconscious can misinterpret signals, especially when it has been programmed by fear or bias. This is why conscious reflection is needed to balance subconscious impulses. For example, someone might feel uneasy around people of a certain background, not because of real danger, but because of subconscious stereotypes absorbed through media or upbringing. The conscious mind has the responsibility to question, is this intuition or prejudice? This dialogue between conscious and subconscious, listening, questioning, guiding, is essential to living wisely. Over time, this dialogue shapes identity. Who you believe yourself to be is partly a conscious narrative, but much of it is subconscious conditioning. If you grew up hearing that you were shy, your subconscious may carry that script, influencing how you act in social situations. If you were told you were a leader, your subconscious may push you toward confidence. The conscious mind can rewrite these stories, but only if it first recognizes them as stories, not facts. Once recognized, new stories can be rehearsed, repeated, and felt until the subconscious adopts them. Identity is not fixed. It is a collaboration between conscious belief and subconscious reinforcement. This leads us to an intriguing possibility. Perhaps true freedom is not about controlling either the conscious or subconscious, but about integrating them. Imagine the conscious as a spotlight, and the subconscious as a vast theatre filled with actors. Some actors are helpful, others are mischievous, and some are shadows of the past. By shining the spotlight, the conscious can choose which actors to highlight, which stories to rehearse, and which ones to let fade into the background. The subconscious holds the stage, but the conscious directs the performance. Neither can put on the show alone. When integration happens, life feels aligned. Actions flow naturally from values. Emotions support rather than sabotage decisions. Creativity arises without force. This state of harmony is rare, but it is possible. Practices like meditation, journaling, therapy, and visualization are all ways of strengthening the bridge between conscious and subconscious. They allow hidden material to surface and conscious intentions to sink deeper. Over time, this creates coherence, a mind that is not divided against itself, but moving as one. The question of who is in control, then, may not have a single answer. Instead, it invites us to see control as a shared process, a dialogue between awareness and instinct, logic and feeling, present intention and past conditioning. The conscious mind is the navigator, setting direction, while the subconscious is the engine, carrying the ship forward. Without the navigator, the engine may run aimlessly. Without the engine, the navigator goes nowhere. Together, they form the mysterious, dynamic partnership that makes up human consciousness. What becomes clear the more we look is that control isn't a straight line. It shifts, it negotiates, and it sometimes even hides itself. Think for a moment about automatic body language. You might walk into a room determined to appear calm and confident. Consciously, you remind yourself to stand tall, keep your shoulders back, and speak clearly. Yet if deep inside your subconscious you're nervous, your body might betray tiny cues: fidgeting fingers, a stiff smile, darting eyes. People around you may pick up on these signals even if they don't consciously notice them. What's fascinating is that your subconscious is controlling much of this behavior without asking for permission. It's drawing from stored patterns about social interactions, past experiences of discomfort, and the emotional associations you've built over time. Your conscious intention, be confident, competes with your subconscious conditioning, and often the subconscious wins. This tug of war happens constantly in daily life. You may consciously decide to wake up early and exercise, but when the alarm goes off, your subconscious pulls you back toward comfort, urging you to stay in bed. You may consciously plan to eat healthier, but the smell of fried food triggers subconscious associations with pleasure and reward, and suddenly the plan crumbles. In these cases, it isn't that the conscious mind is powerless, it's that the subconscious holds more leverage because it operates through deep-rooted associations tied to survival, emotion, and repetition. To understand this leverage, let's look at conditioning. The subconscious is highly responsive to reinforcement. Each time you repeat a behavior and pair it with pleasure or relief, the subconscious marks it as important. Over time, it begins to run that behavior automatically. For example, if you reach for your phone whenever you feel anxious, the subconscious learns, phone equals comfort. Soon the behavior becomes a reflex, not a decision. The conscious mind may later scold itself. I waste too much time scrolling. But the subconscious doesn't operate on scolding. It operates on patterns of association. Unless a new pattern is created, the old one continues. This shows us why willpower alone often fails. Willpower is conscious effort, and conscious effort is like using a small paddle against the currents of a strong river. It can make a difference in the moment, but if the underlying current remains unchanged, eventually it pulls you back. The subconscious is that current. To truly change course, you don't just paddle harder, you redirect the flow itself. This is why techniques like visualization, repetition, and emotional reinforcement work. They bypass raw effort and speak directly to the subconscious, reshaping the riverbed instead of fighting the current. Now consider intuition, one of the most fascinating ways the subconscious communicates with us. Have you ever had a gut feeling that turned out to be right, even when you couldn't explain why? That's your subconscious processing information faster and more broadly than your conscious awareness. The subconscious can pick up on subtle cues, tone of voice, micro-expressions, patterns you've encountered before, long before the conscious mind puts it into words. Intuition is not mystical in this sense. It's the subconscious drawing from its vast database of experience and presenting you with a signal, often felt in the body. When you feel that gut pull, it's your subconscious nudging you, saying, "I've seen this before, and here's what it means." But intuition also shows the double-edged nature of the subconscious. Because it operates on past associations, it can sometimes mislead. For example, someone who grew up in a tense environment may subconsciously associate loud voices with danger. Later in life, they may feel anxious around passionate conversations, even if no real threat exists. Their intuition says something's wrong, but what it's really saying is, this reminds me of something unsafe from the past. Conscious reflection becomes crucial here, helping you question whether the subconscious signal is accurate in the present. Without that partnership, you can end up trapped by old patterns masquerading as instincts. This brings us to perception itself. Most of what we think of as reality is actually a construction built by the subconscious. Your eyes take in data, but the subconscious filters and interprets it before it reaches conscious awareness. That's why two people can look at the same situation and walk away with completely different impressions. The subconscious has colored their perception based on their history, beliefs, and expectations. It decides what to highlight and what to ignore. You consciously believe you're seeing the world as it is, but you're really seeing the world as your subconscious has framed it. Here's a simple example. Imagine walking down a busy street. Out of dozens of faces, one person reminds you faintly of an old friend. Without realizing it, your subconscious highlights that person, making them stand out. Or think about how, when you learn a new word, suddenly you start seeing it everywhere. The word didn't magically appear more often. Your subconscious simply started flagging it as relevant. This is the reticular activating system at work, a network in the brain that decides which stimuli matter and which fade into the background. The subconscious acts as the filter, shaping the very reality that enters conscious awareness. Understanding this filter effect can be life-changing. If the subconscious is always scanning for evidence of what it already believes, then your beliefs act like self-fulfilling prophecies. If deep down you believe I'm unlucky, your subconscious highlights every instance that confirms it and ignores evidence to the contrary. If you believe I'm capable, your subconscious highlights opportunities and supportive signals. In both cases, the subconscious isn't lying. It's simply applying the filter you've given it. The conscious mind can challenge and adjust these beliefs, but only through repeated effort. Otherwise, the subconscious continues to run the same program. Another area where this dynamic becomes clear is memory. Conscious memory feels like pulling files from a cabinet, intentional and deliberate. Subconscious memory, however, is like an invisible script running in the background. You might forget an event consciously, but your subconscious holds on to the emotional charge. That's why certain smells or sounds can trigger sudden waves of feeling. The subconscious remembers not just facts, but sensations and emotions, and it can react long before your conscious mind understands why. Sometimes this works in your favor, bringing joy when you smell a familiar perfume. Other times, it stirs anxiety when you can't even pinpoint the source. So who's in control? At this midpoint, the answer seems less like one or the other and more like a constant negotiation. The conscious mind brings logic, planning, and self-awareness. The subconscious brings memory, habit, and instinct. They push and pull, sometimes aligned, sometimes clashing. The real challenge isn't choosing which one to follow, but learning how to create cooperation between the two. When cooperation happens, you feel it. Decisions come easily, habits support goals, and intuition feels trustworthy. When cooperation fails, life feels like an internal battle. One part of you pulling toward growth and another pulling toward safety or familiarity. Who you believe yourself to be, the I that you carry through your life, rests on a delicate interplay between what you know consciously and what you hold subconsciously. To see this fully, we need to examine how each layer of mind contributes to your sense of self, and how sometimes they pull you in very different directions. Start with the conscious self. This is the version of you that says, I am me. It's the storyteller, the narrator, the voice that explains why you act the way you do. It presents reasons. I didn't call that person back because I was busy. I chose that career because it fits my interests. This conscious self likes to feel in control, to believe it understands the motives behind every action. But psychologists have found that this storyteller is not always honest, not because it intends to lie, but because it often doesn't have access to the real motives hidden in the subconscious. Instead, it fills in the blanks with a plausible explanation. This has been shown in fascinating experiments. For instance, when people are given two items that look nearly identical and asked to choose one, they'll often pick randomly. But when asked why they chose that item, they'll give a reason. This one looks nicer, or I prefer the texture. In reality, the choice may have been arbitrary, but the conscious mind can't stand not knowing. So it creates a story to make the decision feel rational. This is called confabulation, the brain's tendency to invent reasons for subconscious decisions. It demonstrates how often the conscious self plays catch-up, explaining after the fact what the subconscious has already done. Now think about the subconscious self. Unlike the conscious narrator, it doesn't use words. Instead, it shapes your identity through patterns, emotional memory, and automatic responses. If, as a child, you were consistently praised for being helpful, your subconscious builds the identity of I am someone who takes care of others. If you were criticized for speaking up, the subconscious may build the identity of I should stay quiet to be safe. These identities become embedded not through conscious reasoning, but through lived experience and emotional charge. Over time, they become part of how you act in the world, even when your conscious mind disagrees. You may consciously tell yourself, I want to be more assertive, but if your subconscious identity equates assertiveness with danger, you'll feel resistance every time you try. This is where inner conflict is born. The conscious mind says one thing, the subconscious says another, and the self becomes divided. You may recognize this in your own life as that frustrating feeling of self-sabotage, setting a goal with genuine intention, only to find yourself undermining it. But rather than seeing this as weakness, it's more accurate to see it as a disagreement between layers of self. The conscious layer wants growth, the subconscious layer wants safety. The conflict is not illogical. It's two different forms of logic working at once. One way to bridge this divide is through repetition and ritual. The subconscious learns through repetition. The conscious mind learns through reasoning. When the two are combined, change becomes more possible. For example, affirmations are often criticized as being superficial. Just repeating positive phrases doesn't change anything, and that's true if they're said once or twice. But repeated daily with emotion, the subconscious begins to accept them as familiar. What was once strange becomes normal. This doesn't mean the conscious mind disappears. Rather, it provides the reasoning behind the affirmation, while the subconscious absorbs the emotional impact. Over time, the two minds align. Another method is exposure. The subconscious holds on to fear through association. That thing is dangerous. But when the conscious mind repeatedly exposes itself to the feared situation without harm occurring, the subconscious eventually updates its programming. This is the basis of therapies for phobias and anxiety. The conscious mind provides the courage to face the situation. The subconscious slowly rewrites the pattern. Together, they create real change. Creativity also emerges from this interplay. The conscious mind may set the goal, I want to paint a picture of the ocean, but the subconscious supplies the inspiration, pulling from hidden memories of waves, colours, emotions, and patterns. Artists often describe the process as feeling guided by something beyond themselves. That something is the subconscious offering material the conscious could never hold all at once. Then the conscious mind steps in again to shape, refine, and evaluate the work. Creativity is not the property of one part of the mind, but the dance between both. The same is true for problem solving. When you wrestle with a puzzle consciously, you may reach a wall. But then, after stepping away, the answer suddenly arrives while showering or walking. This is the subconscious continuing to process beneath awareness, stitching together connections until the solution bubbles up. The conscious then seizes it, writes it down, and claims the breakthrough. But really, the breakthrough was a collaboration, subconscious synthesis followed by conscious recognition. We can even extend this to moral decisions. The conscious mind reasons about right and wrong, weighing consequences and ethics. The subconscious, meanwhile, operates on gut reactions shaped by culture, upbringing, and instinct. Sometimes the two align, creating certainty. Other times they clash, creating moral dilemmas. For example, someone may consciously reason that stealing in a desperate situation could be justified, yet subconsciously feel overwhelming guilt. The conflict doesn't necessarily mean one side is right and the other wrong. It means the mind is processing values on multiple levels, each shaped by different experiences. One of the deepest ways this duality shows up is in relationships. Consciously, you may know what kind of partner you want: kind, supportive, reliable. Yet subconsciously, you may feel drawn to familiar patterns, even unhealthy ones, because they echo early relationships in your life. This is why people often find themselves repeating cycles in love despite consciously wanting something different. It isn't weakness, it's subconscious programming seeking the familiar. Recognizing this gives you the chance to break the cycle, but only by addressing both layers, consciously deciding what you want, and subconsciously retraining what feels familiar and safe. All of this brings us back to the question of control. At this stage, it's clear that neither the conscious nor the subconscious operates alone. They're like two partners in a dance, sometimes stepping on each other's toes, sometimes moving in perfect harmony. When the subconscious dominates without conscious awareness, life feels automatic, as though old patterns are pulling the strings. When the conscious dominates without acknowledging the subconscious, life feels forced, as though willpower alone must carry the weight. True balance comes when the two are in dialogue, each influencing and supporting the other. But here's where it gets even more intriguing. There may be levels of mind beyond conscious and subconscious altogether. Some psychologists speak of the superconscious, a realm of higher intuition, creativity, or spiritual insight that transcends both reason and habit. Whether or not one accepts this idea, it points to an important truth. The mind may not be limited to the simple division of conscious and subconscious. What we've been exploring may just be the beginning of a much larger map. If that's the case, then the question of control becomes even more layered. The conscious sets goals, the subconscious manages patterns, and perhaps another layer altogether nudges us toward meaning, purpose, or connection. Even if we set aside metaphysical interpretations, it's undeniable that the human mind holds depths we have not yet charted. What feels like control may just be our attempt to navigate this complexity, to make sense of forces that operate on different levels of awareness. By now, we've seen how the conscious mind narrates, reasons, and plans, while the subconscious manages memory, emotion, and instinct. We've explored how the two can clash, cooperate, or even dissolve their boundary in moments of flow or creativity. But to truly grasp the depth of their interaction, we need to look at the forces that shape them both: environment, culture, and time. Because while the mind feels like a self-contained world, it's constantly molded by the context in which it lives. Let's begin with environment. From the moment you're born, your subconscious is recording everything: the tone of your parents' voices, the rhythm of daily routines, the presence or absence of safety. All of it becomes part of your programming. These early impressions are not usually conscious memories, but they sink deep into the subconscious as emotional associations. For example, A child who grows up in a calm and supportive home may carry subconscious associations of trust and openness into adulthood. A child raised in chaos may carry subconscious associations of hypervigilance and fear. Neither child chose these programs consciously, yet both live with their influence daily. As you grow older, the environment continues to shape both conscious and subconscious. Consciously, you may learn facts, values, and skills. Subconsciously, you absorb unspoken rules, cultural cues, and group dynamics. Think about walking into a new workplace. Consciously, you learn the procedures and tasks. Subconsciously, you pick up on whether people smile at each other, whether lateness is tolerated, whether mistakes are punished or forgiven. You may not even realize you've absorbed these cues until you find yourself automatically adapting to them. The subconscious is always learning, not just from what is said, but from what is implied. Culture takes this further. Every culture provides not only knowledge, but also subconscious programming. It defines what is considered polite or rude, what is normal or strange, what is safe or threatening. For example, in some cultures, making direct eye contact is a sign of respect. In others, it's a sign of aggression. Consciously, you might understand these differences, but subconsciously, your programming will still influence how you feel in those situations. This is why cultural transitions can be challenging. The conscious mind may adapt quickly, but the subconscious takes longer to rewrite its associations. Time adds yet another layer. The subconscious is shaped by repetition, and repetition requires time. The longer a habit or belief has been reinforced, the deeper its roots grow. This is why long-held fears or limiting beliefs can be so difficult to change. They are not just thoughts, but grooves worn into the subconscious over years. At the same time, time also allows for new programming. Through repeated conscious effort, old grooves can fade and new ones can form. The brain's plasticity, the ability to reorganize itself, makes this possible. So even though the subconscious is powerful, it is not fixed. It's dynamic, always updating, though often at a slower pace than the conscious mind would like. One of the most striking examples of subconscious shaping comes from language. When you learn a language as a child, it embeds itself deeply in the subconscious. The sounds, grammar, and rhythms feel natural, almost invisible. When you learn a new language as an adult, it often requires conscious effort with much more struggle. That's because the subconscious has already established patterns of sound and meaning, and introducing new ones conflicts with the old. Yet, with enough immersion and repetition, the subconscious can adapt, and eventually the new language begins to feel natural. This process illustrates perfectly how the conscious sets intention, while the subconscious, given enough practice, builds the automatic fluency. The interplay of conscious and subconscious also explains why habits are so sticky. Imagine deciding to exercise more. Consciously, you may plan your schedule, buy equipment, and set goals. But the subconscious resists because it has been programmed to associate relaxation with sitting on the couch. The first few weeks require heavy conscious effort. Each action feels deliberate and forced. But as weeks turn into months, the subconscious begins to record the new pattern. Exercise becomes familiar, even enjoyable. Eventually, the subconscious adopts it as a habit, freeing the conscious mind from constant effort. At that point, the behavior feels natural, almost automatic. This is the essence of change. What begins as conscious struggle eventually becomes subconscious ease. The reverse is also true. Subconscious habits can shape conscious thought. For instance, someone who has unconsciously learned to frown when stressed may later consciously feel unhappy simply because their body is sending signals of tension. The subconscious triggers the physical habit. The the conscious interprets the sensation as mood. This shows how the relationship is bidirectional. Conscious thought influences subconscious pattern, and subconscious pattern influences conscious thought. They are in constant dialogue even when we don't notice it. Another layer of this dialogue involves dreams. While we touched on them earlier, it's worth digging deeper. Dreams are the stage where subconscious material rises to the surface, often disguised in symbols. The conscious mind steps aside, and the subconscious expresses itself through imagery. What makes dreams so fascinating is how they reveal the subconscious perspective on conscious life. A dream about being chased may reflect subconscious feelings of anxiety about a problem you consciously dismiss. A dream about flying may symbolize subconscious feelings of freedom or release. In this sense, dreams act as a nightly negotiation between the two levels of mind, with the subconscious sending messages in its own symbolic language. Technology has given us new tools to study this interplay. Brain scans show that during sleep, areas linked to emotion and memory light up, while areas linked to rational control quiet down. This confirms that the subconscious is active when the conscious takes a break. Similarly, in waking life, brain imaging shows subconscious activity preparing for decisions before conscious awareness arises. These findings challenge the idea of the conscious mind as sole controller and instead suggest a layered process where subconscious groundwork often precedes conscious choice. This layered process also explains why self-awareness is so powerful. When you become aware of a subconscious pattern, you bring it into the light of consciousness. Awareness itself does not always change the pattern, but it creates the possibility of change. For example, realizing that you always interrupt people when nervous doesn't immediately stop the habit, but it gives you the conscious option to catch yourself and choose differently. Each time you do, the subconscious records the new behavior. Over time, the habit rewires. Self-awareness acts as the bridge between conscious intention and subconscious programming. But here's something even more intriguing. Not all subconscious patterns come from personal experience. Some may be inherited. Research in epigenetics suggests that trauma and stress can affect gene expression in ways that pass down through generations. This means your subconscious may carry echoes of fears or tendencies that originated in your ancestors' lives. For example, a fear of scarcity might persist in families that lived through famine, even generations later when food is abundant. These inherited patterns blur the line between individual and collective subconscious, showing that your mind is not shaped in isolation, but as part of a larger human story. This brings us to the idea of the collective subconscious. First introduced by Carl Jung, it suggests that beneath individual subconscious minds lies a shared reservoir of symbols, myths, and archetypes. Stories of heroes, journeys, and struggles appear in cultures across the world, even those that never communicated. Jung proposed that these patterns reflect a shared subconscious heritage of humanity. Whether or not one accepts this fully, it highlights the fact that the subconscious is not purely personal. It is shaped by larger forces, culture, history, even evolution, that go beyond any single conscious mind. So once again, the question arises, who's in control? At this point, it seems the answer must include not just conscious and subconscious, but also environment, culture, and history. The conscious mind believes it is an individual agent, making choices freely. But the subconscious carries patterns from childhood, community, and even ancestry. Control, then, is not just within you, it's also around you and before you. Recognizing this doesn't mean surrendering to fate. It means seeing the full scope of influences at play. Only then can you consciously participate in reshaping them. And this recognition leads to empowerment. When you understand that the subconscious is shaped by environment and repetition, you realize you can feed it new patterns. Surround yourself with people who embody the qualities you want to cultivate. Immerse yourself in environments that reinforce your goals. Use rituals, routines, and symbols to speak the language of the subconscious. Instead of fighting against its power, you harness it. The conscious provides the vision, the subconscious provides the momentum. Together, they can move mountains. We've followed the conscious and subconscious through biology, psychology, memory, environment, and culture. Now it's time to step into the territory of transformation. How these two layers of mind don't just coexist, but can be intentionally integrated to create profound changes in behavior, perception, and even identity. Because while it's tempting to see the subconscious as a stubborn archive and the conscious as a fragile narrator, the truth is they can enter into collaboration that reshapes what it means to be in control. Let's start with a paradox. The subconscious is the seat of automatic patterns, but it cannot be reprogrammed through force. If you've ever tried to will yourself to stop worrying or to stop craving something, you know how ineffective conscious commands alone can be. The subconscious does not respond to orders. It responds to repetition, imagery, and emotion. That means integration requires strategy, not brute force. Consider the use of visualization. When you consciously imagine an outcome in vivid detail, whether it's speaking confidently, winning a race, or staying calm in a stressful meeting, you're not just daydreaming. Brain scans show that the subconscious processes mental imagery almost as if it were real. Muscles fire in micro patterns, emotional centers light up, and neural pathways strengthen. Over time, visualization gives the subconscious a script to follow. Athletes use this technique to rehearse success, but it works equally well for everyday habits. The conscious creates the picture. The subconscious rehearses it into reality. Another strategy is emotional anchoring. The subconscious prioritizes emotional experiences because emotions are signals of importance. If something makes you feel strong, fear, joy, or excitement, the subconscious records it more deeply than neutral events. This is why you remember your first heartbreak or your happiest childhood memory far more vividly than what you ate for lunch last Tuesday. To transform patterns, you can deliberately link new behaviors with positive emotions. Pairing exercise with music you love, studying in a cozy environment, or celebrating small wins all tell the subconscious, this matters, keep it. The conscious sets the intention, but the emotional charge embeds it. Then there's the role of language. The words you repeat to yourself, consciously or unconsciously, become scripts for the subconscious. Negative self-talk, repeated often enough, creates subconscious expectations of failure. Positive affirmations, when repeated with emotion and belief, can create new expectations of success. But it's not about simply saying nice things. The subconscious is attuned to congruence. If you repeat an affirmation with skepticism, it may not stick. The trick is to pair affirmations with feelings and evidence, making them believable. That way, the conscious mind provides language, while the subconscious accepts it as programming. But integration isn't only about adding new patterns. It's also about confronting old ones. Many subconscious beliefs form in childhood, when the conscious mind was too undeveloped to question them. These beliefs about worth, safety, or identity may no longer serve you, but they can still shape your behavior. Integration requires revisiting these beliefs with the awareness of an adult. Through reflection, therapy, or introspection, you bring these patterns into conscious light. Once you see them, you can question them. Are they true? Were they ever true? Do they still serve you? This process doesn't erase the past, but it loosens the grip of subconscious scripts that once ran unquestioned. The act of questioning itself is powerful. The conscious mind is uniquely equipped to examine assumptions. The subconscious accepts experience without debate. The conscious can analyze, compare, and reframe. For example, if your subconscious has stored the belief that mistakes are dangerous, conscious reflection can remind you that mistakes are how learning happens. Each time you consciously challenge a limiting belief, you weaken its authority. Over time, the subconscious begins to absorb the new framing. What once triggered fear may begin to trigger curiosity instead. This is the essence of cognitive reframing, a tool often used in psychology to shift subconscious reactions by applying conscious reinterpretation. Meditation provides another doorway into integration. When you meditate, you quiet the conscious chatter of analysis and judgment, allowing subconscious material to surface. Thoughts, memories, or emotions may arise seemingly out of nowhere. By observing them without attachment, you give the subconscious space to express itself. At the same time, meditation strengthens conscious awareness, making it easier to notice patterns in daily life. This dual effect, bringing subconscious content into awareness while enhancing conscious observation, creates fertile ground for integration. Many who practice regularly report feeling less reactive and more intentional, which is exactly what happens when subconscious and conscious come into balance. Hypnosis works on a similar principle, but from a different angle. By guiding the conscious mind into a relaxed, focused state, hypnosis makes the subconscious more receptive to suggestion. This doesn't mean surrendering control. It means bypassing the critical filters of the conscious mind so that new scripts can be written more directly. People have used hypnosis to quit smoking, reduce pain, or overcome phobias. The conscious collaborates by setting the intention, while the subconscious accepts the suggestion more deeply. Again, integration comes from recognizing that both levels have roles to play. Now let's look at identity itself. Much of what you call self is a combination of conscious narrative and subconscious pattern. You may consciously describe yourself as confident, but if your subconscious is filled with memories of failure, the identity feels shaky. Conversely, you may consciously describe yourself as anxious, but if your subconscious carries patterns of resilience, the identity may be less fixed than you think. Integration means aligning the story you tell with the patterns you live. When conscious identity and subconscious programming reinforce each other, the sense of self becomes coherent. When they conflict, the self feels fractured. Transformation, then, is not just about changing habits, but about realigning identity at both levels. Identity also highlights the limits of control. You cannot simply decide to become a new person overnight, because identity is not purely conscious. It's built from countless subconscious memories, habits, and associations. But you can begin shaping identity by consistently practicing new narratives and behaviors. For example, if you want to become a writer, you consciously choose to write each day. The subconscious initially resists, but over time, the repeated behavior and emotional reinforcement embed the identity. Eventually, writing feels natural, and the subconscious accepts, I am a writer. Identity becomes less of a decision and more of a lived pattern. This brings us to perhaps the deepest question of integration. Is there ever such a thing as complete control? The more we explore, the more it seems that control is always shared. The conscious directs, the subconscious executes. The subconscious triggers, the conscious interprets. Rather than one being the master, they form a partnership. Control, in this view, is not about domination, but about harmony. When the two are aligned, life feels fluid. When they are at odds, life feels conflicted. The pursuit of integration, then, is not about silencing the subconscious or inflating the conscious. It's about dialogue. The conscious must listen to the subconscious through dreams, emotions, habits, and intuition. The subconscious must be guided by the conscious through intention, reflection, and choice. Together, they create a dynamic balance that allows for growth. Some traditions frame this integration in spiritual terms. They describe it as uniting the lower self and higher self, or as aligning the rational mind with the soul. Whether or not one accepts those terms, the underlying principle is the same. Wholeness requires cooperation between the different layers of mind. Neuroscience frames it in biology. Psychology frames it in behavior. Spirituality frames it in symbolism. Each perspective points toward the same truth. Integration is the path to freedom. What does freedom look like in this context? It doesn't mean total control over every thought or impulse. That would be impossible. Freedom means the ability to recognize patterns and choose how to respond. It means no longer being a puppet of subconscious programming or a prisoner of conscious overthinking. It means living with awareness, where conscious and subconscious both serve rather than sabotage each other. Let's return to a simple example, a person who fears public speaking. At first, the subconscious floods the body with anxiety, while the conscious scrambles to remember lines. The two are misaligned, creating misery. But through practice, visualization, reframing, and small successes, the subconscious begins to associate speaking with safety instead of danger. The conscious tells a new story. I can do this. Over time, the two align. Speaking becomes easier, even enjoyable. Freedom here is not the absence of nerves, but the ability to speak despite them, guided by a cooperative mind. On a larger scale, integration can shift entire life trajectories. Someone who has lived in subconscious fear of rejection may avoid opportunities for years, but by bringing that fear into awareness, reframing it, and practicing new behaviors, they reshape both belief and identity. The subconscious learns that rejection is survivable, even useful. The conscious reclaims the power to choose. The result is a life no longer limited by old scripts. That is the promise of integration, not perfection, but expansion. Now it's time to take the discussion deeper into philosophy, science, and the mystery of what control even means. Because beneath all the practical examples lies a profound question. If both the conscious and subconscious are shaping our behavior, where does the self fit in? Who or what is the true controller? Let's start with neuroscience. Brain imaging has revealed something startling. Many decisions are initiated subconsciously before we're even aware of them. In classic experiments, electrodes placed on the brain detected neural activity indicating a choice up to several seconds before participants consciously reported making that choice. This suggests that the subconscious is not just influencing decisions, it may be starting them. The conscious mind seems to arrive late to the party, claiming ownership of decisions it didn't initiate. If that's true, then the idea of the conscious self as the sole decision maker is an illusion. But does that mean we have no free will? Not necessarily. Think of it this way. The subconscious proposes, the conscious disposes. Subconscious processes generate impulses based on past experience, emotion, and instinct. The conscious mind then reviews, vetoes, or refines those impulses. For example, you may feel a sudden urge to say something unkind. That urge arises subconsciously, but the conscious mind intervenes, reminding you of consequences, and you choose not to say it. This suggests that control is layered. The subconscious provides raw material, the conscious shapes it. Free will may not lie in initiating impulses, but in how we respond to them. Philosophers have wrestled with this for centuries. Determinists argue that every action is caused by prior events, genes, upbringing, environment, leaving no room for true freedom. Libertarians in philosophy argue the opposite, that individuals possess an irreducible capacity for free choice. A middle ground, called compatibilism, proposes that freedom doesn't mean acting without cause, but rather acting in alignment with one's inner desires and values, even if those desires are shaped by subconscious processes. From this view, control is not about absolute independence from causality, but about coherence between layers of mind. This coherence raises another issue, the narrative self. Psychologists have noted that the conscious mind creates a story about who we are, weaving together memories and decisions into a coherent identity. But much of this story is retroactive. The subconscious acts, the conscious explains. Imagine catching yourself laughing at a joke before realizing why it's funny. The subconscious recognized the pattern and triggered the response. The conscious catches up and tells the story. This storytelling function is vital for maintaining a sense of continuity, but it also means that our idea of control is partly a construction. The conscious may feel like the captain, but in many ways it is also the narrator of a ship steered by deeper currents. Yet to dismiss conscious control entirely would be a mistake. The conscious mind has unique capacities that the subconscious lacks. The ability to simulate future scenarios, to question assumptions, to apply logic, and to deliberately change course. While the subconscious is bound to the past, habits, conditioning, instincts, the conscious can imagine futures that have never existed. This power of imagination allows for leaps beyond conditioning. Without it, humanity would remain trapped in cycles of repetition. With it, we innovate, create art, explore science, and envision worlds that defy history. One way to think of this is through the metaphor of a rider and a horse. The subconscious is the horse, powerful, instinctual, and capable of navigating terrain quickly and automatically. The conscious is the rider, able to set direction, make corrections, and guide the journey. A rider without a horse goes nowhere. A horse without a rider runs aimlessly. Together, they form a partnership. But unlike a horse, the subconscious is not merely an animal. It's also a keeper of memory, language, and social patterns. It is far more complex than a single metaphor can capture. Still, the image highlights the necessity of cooperation. Control is not absolute on either side, it's negotiated in motion. This negotiation extends into morality. If subconscious impulses often arise before conscious choice, to what extent are we responsible for them? For instance, if someone feels an unconscious bias but consciously chooses not to act on it, are they morally accountable for the bias itself? Many argue that responsibility begins with awareness. You cannot control the emergence of a subconscious impulse, but you can control whether to reinforce it or to challenge it. In this sense, morality lives at the intersection of subconscious conditioning and a conscious choice. Growth, then, is the process of bringing subconscious biases into awareness and reshaping them in alignment with conscious values. Science adds another layer when we consider the role of prediction. The brain is increasingly understood not as a passive receiver of information, but as a prediction engine. It constantly anticipates what will happen next, filling in gaps based on past experience. This predictive coding happens largely subconsciously. You don't consciously calculate where a ball will land when you play catch. Your brain predicts it automatically. The conscious mind steps in when predictions fail or when outcomes matter deeply. This means the subconscious is not just a storehouse of the past, but also an engine for forecasting the future. The conscious may feel in charge, but often it is adjusting predictions made subconsciously. If subconscious processes are so central, does that mean the conscious is just an illusion? Some scientists have argued yes, that consciousness is merely the byproduct of deeper processes, a spotlight with no real agency. But this view misses something important. Even if consciousness is late to the game, its presence changes the rules. Self-awareness alters how we relate to impulses. Knowing that you're angry is different from simply being angry. Knowing that you're afraid is different from blindly reacting in fear. Awareness creates space, and in that space lies choice. Whether or not the conscious initiates, it transforms. This transformation has implications beyond the individual. Consider society itself. Cultures can be seen as collective minds, with shared conscious narratives, laws, values, philosophies, and shared subconscious patterns, customs, taboos, myths. Just as an individual struggles between conscious ideals and subconscious impulses, societies wrestle with the tension between declared principles and ingrained habits. Progress often happens when the collective conscious calls out subconscious biases and reshapes them, ending slavery, expanding rights, challenging prejudices. In this sense, the drama of conscious versus subconscious plays out not just within individuals, but across civilizations. On an even broader scale, the question of control touches on existence itself. Some traditions suggest that the conscious and subconscious are not separate, but expressions of a deeper field of awareness. The subconscious holds the infinite patterns of possibility. The conscious selects among them. Together, they create the dance of reality. From this perspective, the question of who's in control shifts. It's not about dominance, but about participation in a larger flow. The conscious doesn't control the subconscious any more than a wave controls the ocean. Both are movements within the same sea. And yet, this perspective does not remove responsibility. Even if control is shared, even if freedom is partial, we still live as though choices matter, because they do. The conscious shapes the future by how it responds to the subconscious. The subconscious, in turn, shapes the conscious by what it delivers from the past. Their interplay is not a flaw, but a feature, designed to balance instinct with innovation, memory with imagination. We've come a long way exploring the conscious and subconscious from nearly every angle: biology, psychology, culture, identity, philosophy, and even the nature of free will itself. But now, as we reach the end of this journey, it's time to return to where we began. The quiet space where the conscious mind fades and the subconscious takes center stage. That place, of course, is sleep. When you fall asleep, your conscious awareness softens and recedes. The endless chatter of thought, decision, and analysis slows down. The subconscious, however, does not sleep. It continues to process, repair, and integrate. Dreams arise, drawing on memories, emotions, and hidden patterns. Problems you couldn't solve during the day suddenly find answers in the night, not because you forced them consciously, but because your subconscious worked on them quietly, beneath awareness. Sleep is not just rest, it is a shift in control. The conscious steps aside, and the subconscious takes over. This nightly exchange shows us something profound. Control is not a rigid possession. It is fluid, alternating between layers of mind depending on circumstance. In waking life, the conscious takes the lead, setting plans and interpreting events. In sleep, the subconscious guides, sorting through information and weaving meaning into memory. Neither can dominate fully, because both are essential. Without the subconscious, the conscious would drown in detail and collapse under pressure. Without the conscious, the subconscious would cycle endlessly through the past, unable to imagine something new. This rhythm reflects a deeper truth. Life itself is not about absolute control, but about balance. We are not machines with a single operator. We are ecosystems of processes, woven together by awareness. Control is not something we hold once and for all. It is something we participate in moment by moment, through the cooperation of our inner layers. Think back to the moments in your own life when you felt most alive. Perhaps it was in a conversation where words flowed effortlessly, or in a performance where your body moved with grace, or in a quiet evening where insights suddenly clicked into place. In those moments, were you consciously planning every detail, or was your subconscious guiding, while your conscious awareness witnessed and refined? Chances are it was both. Flow states, creativity, and intuition are examples of this cooperation. They remind us that the greatest control doesn't come from domination, but from trust. Trusting the subconscious doesn't mean abandoning the conscious. It means recognizing that both have wisdom. The subconscious holds memory, instinct, and the quiet voice of intuition. The conscious holds logic, foresight, and deliberate choice. Together, they make us who we are, beings who learn from the past yet imagine the future, who are shaped by hidden patterns yet capable of awareness, who are influenced by forces beyond control yet able to steer within them. And so, as we ask for the final time, who's really in control? Perhaps the most honest answer is, it depends. Sometimes the subconscious leads, sometimes the conscious leads, and sometimes they move together in harmony. What matters is not choosing one over the other, but learning to listen, align, and integrate. The gift of being human is not perfect control. The gift is awareness, the ability to notice the dance of conscious and subconscious, and to participate in it. When you observe your thoughts, challenge your patterns, and nurture your inner world, you are shaping both layers of mind. You are not the horse alone, nor the rider alone. You are the whole system, the partnership itself. Tonight, as you drift into sleep, you are handing the reins to your subconscious. You are allowing it to carry what your conscious cannot. It will dream, repair, and integrate, preparing you for tomorrow. In the morning, when you wake, your conscious will return, ready to direct, question, and choose. This daily cycle is the perfect reminder that you are not defined by control alone, but by rhythm, by exchange, by the dialogue of mind. So let yourself rest in the knowing that you don't have to decide once and for all who's in charge. Instead, you can live in the mystery, the balance, and the beauty of being both conscious and subconscious at once. That is where freedom lies, not in choosing sides, but in embracing the whole. Thank you for joining me on this exploration. This has been Sleep Space, where we journey through science, mind, and wonder. May your night be restful, your dreams meaningful, and your waking hours filled with curiosity for the vastness within you. Good night.